Hello, you're listening to the K12 Tech Podcast, bringing you insights into the world of education technology. Stay tuned as we discuss the past, the present, and most importantly, the future of technology in our schools. Can you elaborate on some of the accomplishments that you had mentioned of like Connect MV and then next level funding, and then how they fit into your broader vision for digital equality?
You ever heard of a BHAG?
Yes.
Big, hairy, audacious goal. It's a really gross name, but one of my goals that I may or may not be able to obtain in my career is to see that all Posey County students have good, reliable access to the internet, and that is a beast that is a big challenge. And you've really got to work on that challenge locally, regionally, and nationally. And I've done that before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. Locally, during COVID, we were able to secure some funds from the GEAR grant that allowed us to purchase Wi-Fi hotspots from all three of the providers in our area, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. And we were able to provide access at home to anybody that needed it. You didn't have to prove that you didn't have the internet or anything like that. Like, if you need one, we're going to get you one. And we used all three carriers because in our rural county, it's widespread, and Verizon may work great here, but not over here. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get an AT&T hotspot if you live over there. That program ran for a couple years. It was highly successful. Not only students, but also any staff member that needed access to the internet. To me, I believe it's a utility, just like water, electricity. It's a basic human right, I believe, in my mind. Unfortunately, the hotspot program was more of a Band-Aid. Yeah. We were just trying to get to a point where, actual fiber could be ran to the homes in Posey County. And those efforts were also underway. And the next level funding is some of the grant money that's being used right now to kind of build a fiber ring around the county that will eventually, at some point, provide more access to more homes in Posey County. And that was not just an effort on my part, but I was part of a group of the Posey County Broadband Task Force that worked closely with the Economic Development Group to bring those funds and eventually bring the access to students, all homes in Posey County. So there's that, and then on the national level, you had Chantel on the podcast. Her and I just got back from Washington, D.C. earlier in the year, where we went to Capitol Hill. We talked to our representatives about not just internet access, but other EdTech concerns, and cybersecurity being one of those. So really working on the national level as well. So with all of those things, it's slow, but I do believe we will get there in my lifetime. I really believe that in Posey County, and then obviously all of Indiana, we've got to get that connectivity out to folks.
Yeah, and in your transition, right, beginning your career, computers are just starting to be implemented to now it's in every fabric of education. Obviously you're going from, I'm sure your technology budget each year has 50x'd from when you started. Yeah. What are some pitfalls, or what are some costs that schools are not, you see as schools are not preparing for, or maybe since COVID, just some things schools need to be preparing for on the fund side?
Well, I would say, when you are looking at putting in something new, you've always got to look at sustainability. I think there's that natural inclination to look at the initial cost of something, but you've really got to look at the total cost of ownership over time and be able to budget for that. For example, just putting your device rotation, putting your devices on a rotation, and having that in the budget every year. So, like for us, we replace, I believe it's first grade, fifth grade, and ninth grade Chromebooks every year, and we've got the money in the bank to do that. Yeah. So, really looking at the sustainability, and or if you're going to buy a piece of software, like, okay, this is how much it's going to cost, but what's it going to cost in year 2, year 3, year 4?
Yeah. So
doing some smart budgeting, I would say, is very important. And then, when you do sign contracts, always look at the exit clause. I know many folks will decide they want to change, go to a different program. But if you don't notify them within 30 days before, exiting the contract, then you're on the hook for another year or so.
Yeah.
So those are some little tidbits that I've picked up over the years, of my own failures.
Well, yeah, I just think that's, typically tech directors, either they come from the tech or the education world, they haven't come from the finance world. And that's one thing that's been talked about on this podcast before is learning that and learning how to manage a budget and then prepare. And that's just another thing of like, you have to keep that threshold open to be able to prepare for that, because you have cybersecurity you're worried about. Right. You have all these other areas, but the financial side, staying on top of that is extremely important. So you've mentioned that, you're a collaborator with a lot of these different organizations, and you've built like a good team. Can you share some things that you've done in building your team and collaborating where you try to add value?
With my tech team?
Mm-hmm.
I would say, until the last 5 or 6 years, I ran my technology team just like your typical manager would. I personally hired everyone, and I personally evaluated everyone in my staff. And I would say that, our staff, over the years, we've had, some really good staff members and some folks that struggled.
Yeah.
And I would say during COVID, I decided to make some changes as far as how I did things. Our superintendent had us do a book study on a book called The Program. It's a military-type book that talks about building the best team. And in that book, they talked about developing core values with your team and using those values to really dictate everything you do, from hiring, evaluations, and just everyday practice. Mm-hmm. So with my current team, we went through a core value exercise, and we developed 3 core values: opportunity, commitment, and integrity. And we use these in our hiring practice. In fact, I don't hire the people personally anymore. I brought in the people I trust, my executive, my database manager, my network manager, my system manager, my secretary, people I trust. And we're the ones that evaluate the candidates. So it's not just me, because I need to hear diverse opinions on things. And these are the people I trust, so why wouldn't I have them in the room? So with these core values, what we do now with our interviewees is we do not even worry about their qualifications. We don't even talk about them during the first interview. Our job during the first interview is to see if their values match our values. Because if their values don't match our values, they're not going to have a good experience here, and neither are we. And that's the mistake I was making over the years. Is I was more concerned with their technical qualifications than whether they were going to be a good fit into this department. Well, once we did that, I noticed, like, okay, if we were doing this the old way, I would not have hired this person. And that happened on 3 occasions where we hired the less qualified person because they were going to be a better fit. And these 3 folks are just rock stars. So it really transformed the culture in our department. And really, those core values just give everyone a shared vision of what we're about and what we're doing. Opportunity. Everything we do opens up opportunities for students, for teachers, and then opportunity for our techs. I want to provide them opportunities to learn, to grow. Maybe sometimes they leave us, or maybe sometimes they don't. But if they need training, I'm going to get that training for them. So there's opportunities. And then commitment. Our number one job, and I've been saying this for years, our number one job is to support the classroom teacher. That's our number one job. Yeah. Every decision you make, if you work in my department, is this good for the classroom teacher? Now, it can get a little hairy when you're talking about cybersecurity, and you and I talked about that a little bit earlier, kind of balancing cybersecurity, concerns with what teachers need to do. So there is some flexibility that's needed. So commitment, and then, integrity. We deal with a lot of confidential information. You can imagine over the years, investigations have been, we've been a part of, just being confidential in everything you do. So I think integrity is something that our department runs on as well.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned in this is 360 evaluations and transparent communication. And specifically said transparent. I love that. I think that is very overlooked, via Slack in your department. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about what that transparency means, and then what those evaluations are and how you're doing those?
Yeah. So transparency and communication, I would say it's twofold. I'd say when there are problems that need to be taken care of, is very important that you take care of them when they happen, rather than letting things fester.
What's the saying? Problems don't get better with age.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just wine, I think. And, you don't want to wait till an evaluation to tell someone that they're doing something wrong. They should already know when you sit down in the evaluation. They should already know what they need to be working on, if there's anything they need to be working on. So just, transparent communication. Then with Slack, I learned a lot about my employees during the quarantine lockdown when we were all in our houses supporting teachers and students. We were all used to working in the same room. Mm-hmm. So if I needed to talk to Joe, I don't have a Joe, but if I had a Joe, I would be able to just yell over there and we'd talk. But we can't do that anymore. We're spread out in our houses. So we implemented Slack, which is just a chat, business chat program. And some of my more introverted employees thrived on that platform. In fact, I got to know them. I really didn't know them because interpersonal communication, in-person communication is not something they liked. But using Slack, I was able to form closer relationships with some of my employees. And we still use it today because we're still spread out now. Folks are out and working out in the building. So having that open chat program really transformed what we're doing and how we do it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think transparency too, that's something like us as a company, it's like, people who try to send one email to one person, it's like, no, you need to make sure everybody understands what's going on. And like, not letting anything kind of be hidden or under the surface. And then how often are you doing your evaluations? Is that a weekly, monthly, quarterly?
Yeah, we try to meet 2 or 3 times a year. Usually it just ends up 2. And the evaluations are set up in 2 different phases. There's a conversation piece.
Yep.
And this is where I really want to know more about what the hopes and dreams of my employees are.
Yeah.
I want to know, where do you want to be in 5 years, and can I help you get there? Yeah. I've got some employees that have some very high ceilings, and I want to help them get there. My job is to help them grow.
Yeah.
And like I said, sometimes that means they're going to leave us. But what I keep hearing is like, I like working here. I want to stay here. Because we've got a solid team, and then our leadership above us is outstanding. Our superintendent is amazing. So the conversation piece is important. And then the 360 evaluation is something we're currently implementing. And that is a kind of a feedback database. So normally it would be good to get feedback from your tech's customers, and the customers are the teachers, right? So let's get some feedback from them on how they feel like things are going. That's good, right? So that's normal. But then let's also get feedback from the middle, like from other techs, the other employees that work around them.
Yeah.
And these are all just done through surveys that we're still developing. And then, obviously, I'm going to be able to provide feedback on the employee from above. And then the final piece of that, to kind of make the 360 round, is that, let's give the employee a chance to provide feedback on me.
Yeah.
So just being able to collect that information and use it for the conversation, I think, is just a very powerful way to see the whole person. So.
Yeah, I think that regular feedback is important, and I spent quite a bit of time in the military, and we did like monthly counselings and stuff. I think the problem is when someone's like, "Oh, I got counseled," they think it's like a bad thing, like that's a stigma around it, and it's like, but we counsel on good and bad. Like, hey, these are the good things you did this month. These are the things you need to improve on. And we've just found that the good employees really, really like that, and the bad employees really don't like that. And I think and what that does is it gets the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus. And but I like that. I like that 362 where you're kind of getting like multiple points. When you're getting feedback from your technicians or your department, is that anonymous typically, or is that like, this person said this about you? Because we do it anonymous when it's going up.
Sure. I would say it's strictly anonymous.
Yeah.
Unless there's an issue that we need to take care of that's specific, that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
But for the most case, the feedback would be anonymous. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, that the reason I wanted to bring that up is, any tech directors out there that are listening, like, oh, like, some people don't want to hear it specifically, but it's like more of the people giving you feedback. If they know that it's their name attached to it, they're probably going to softball it to you.
Absolutely. Like when the employee is going to provide feedback on me, know it's going to be maybe not the whole truth. But I feel like my employees, and this is the best team I've ever had in my career. I feel like they trust me enough to tell me the truth.
Yeah.
They will tell me when something's not working. One of my big things with our new ticketing system is that it implemented with Slack. Like tickets could get entered by a customer, a teacher, and then that could appear in a Slack channel. And that's really the whole reason I picked that ticketing system. Well, once we implemented it, and it's great, it's called Freshworks, we put the Slack connection in there, and they just didn't like it. They were getting too many notifications. They're getting a notification in their email that there's a ticket assigned to them, and now it's in the Slack channel. It's just too much. I'm like, okay. So we don't do that. But they felt comfortable enough to tell me that this is not going to work.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that.
Yeah, and that's important too, because you don't want people to be unhappy working under some sort of process. And it's good to get that feedback right away too. So yeah, that's really good. So being a tech director, hours are a lot of times uneven. What do you do personally in your personal life to recharge and to stay on balance? And what do you like to do with your free time?
Oh,
Fill the tank.
well, I really enjoy Indiana basketball.
Okay.
I bought season tickets last year for the first time. I didn't think that was anything I would ever be able to do. I thought that was just for like millionaires.
Are you saying IU basketball or Pacer?
IU, Indiana
Okay.
University basketball. Just been a fanatic my whole life, so I do that. I have 3 kids. I hang out with them, and Amy, my wife. We have a pool. We sit by the pool and recharge that way. I like going for walks and running, and I would say to anyone out there that may get burnout, you've really got to take care of yourself first. Because when you're gone, and your health is very important. So just it's constant. I don't know if I want to say battle, but a challenge. As you get older, you gotta exercise, eat right, take care of yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Kind of closing out the podcast. The point of this is to help people who might want to become tech directors in different positions, whether maybe a teacher or someone who's in a tech department. What advice would you give them on maybe a focus and then ways that they can be bettering themselves, and ways they can start working towards that goal?
I would say one piece of advice that I wish I had known is, early on is don't try to be something you're not. The tech director role, you're in it because you're a problem solver.
Yeah.
And people like problem solvers. In fact, you will get pulled into things that have nothing to do with technology. My superintendent has me doing marketing. And it's not because he thinks I'm a marketing genius. He knows I'm a good problem solver. And marketing is a problem we're trying to solve. And he recognizes that. So, but these are examples of me doing things that I am comfortable with. But, if you're a techie type person, you should not be touching any type of curriculum or making any decisions on teaching practices. And sometimes I got thrown into that. I didn't feel comfortable there, but no one else was doing anything. So I would say, stay in your lane if you can, unless your boss tells you not to, and try not to be something you're not, because I don't know what it's like to teach.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done it a couple times. It's exhausting, but that is not something that I need to have my hands on. But I can tell you if a program's going to be compatible with what we're doing, with what we have. I can make sure they have tech support. I can make sure that they have a rostering capability with Clever. I can do those things, but I'm not going to tell you that that's good for kids, because that's not my thing.
Yeah. That's one characteristic I've seen of the great tech directors is like, are you good at solving problems? Because the book isn't written and published for what technology is currently in every single school or will be. So that's a characteristic I would say if you're not a good problem solver, need to start solving more problems on your own. Maybe next time your sink isn't working quite right, figure out how to fix it. Because that's definitely a characteristic of mine is, I don't know how to do, I started out my business. A friend of mine came to me and said, my screen broke on my iPhone. You seem like you can figure it out. And I did, and went horribly. I had to pay somebody else to do it, but I saw that person do that, and I'm like, I can teach myself how to do that. I can figure that out. Yeah. And just through that, that characteristic, because it's the same thing when you run a business. It's like, you got to be a problem solver. Otherwise, you got to pay people who you can't afford to solve those problems for you. But I love that. Are there any last thoughts that you want to share, just maybe about your career or for those who are going in this field, just about like your time and some focuses?
Oh, well, I would say if you think you have imposter syndrome, work on that. That's something I've struggled with for a while. But I look back at my career and I'm like, I've done some amazing things. But I never had that feeling like I deserved all this. Yeah. I guess my advice to them is you do deserve it. Take it, own it, and be proud of it. Because the work here we do in schools is important work. It's good work, and it's public service, and that should be commended.
Yeah. Love that. Well, Bill, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I'm excited to see what you do with the rest of your career and those goals you have. I hope they I'm sure that they will come to fruition before the end of your career. So
thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill.
All right. Thanks.